to keep his camera off as he is in the wilds of Andorra, and he's trying to keep his Wi-Fi signal strong, so he will not have it on. Members and officers can indicate they want to speak by pressing the hands up icon. In the event of any vote, the Democratic Services Manager will call out the names of the members who will then cast their vote for, against or abstain. I will now proceed to the agenda business. Apologies have been received from Councillors Mike Hearn and Councillor Alex Williams. Councillor Ian Spiller, as I said, is away but is trying to be online, and Councillor Nora Clark has indicated that she might have to leave. It depends on the length of the meeting. Are there any more apologies, please? No? Sorry. Councillor Stephen Bledsoe? Oh.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I please tender apologies for Councillor Freya Bledsoe, who continues to recuperate from numerous health issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bledsoe. Councillor Ross Thomas?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Apologies for Councillor Robert Smith. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Heidi Bennett?
Apologies, Madam Mayor. I may actually drop out. My Wi-Fi isn't great at the moment. Apologies.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest, please? Are there any declarations of personal or prejudicial interest, please? Councillor Richard Williams?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wish to declare an interest on pages 164 and 222 of the reports. There is a reference to the Town and Community Council Fund, and I'm giving notice as a member of Pencoed Town Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Elaine Winstanley?
Thank you. I just want to register a personal interest in items 3 and items 5, as I'm an employee of Arwen Cultural Trust, who manage items such as my Stake Town Hall and the Grand Pavilion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Timothy Wood?
Prejudicial interest, anything relating to Bridgend Indoor Market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Amanda Williams?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. My hand just went down, so apologies for that. Can I register a personal interest, because I think the debate may end up coming in to discuss schools, and I am now a community governor for Coity Primary School. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can I just check something with Councillor Wood?
Yeah. Can we just go back to Councillor Timothy Wood, please?
Can I just check, Councillor Wood, you declared a prejudicial interest. Which item is that in relation to?
Questions relating to the budget.
Sorry?
Questions relating to the budget.
So you were going to be leaving for item 3?
If there's something comes up with the Bridgend Indoor Market, yeah.
Okay, but have you got you declared a prejudicial item in that item, which means you'd have to leave for that item?
No, not have to leave for the whole. No, if there's a question relating to the indoor market, that's all.
Councillor Ian Williams, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just like to declare a personal interest as a governor of Brintake Comprehensive School, Oldcastle Primary School, and also as anything relating to Bridgend Town Council.
Thank you. Are there any more? No? Okay, thank you. Councillor Evans, please.
Yeah, I wonder if we can just get clarity from the monitoring officer with regards to these declarations. There's a lot of governors here, whether they be community or chairs of governors, and there are also lots of representatives here from town and community councils. Would we all have to declare this, please, Kelly?
If you're appointed by the authority, and it's a general discussion about schools or about town and community councils, then no. If it relates specifically to your school or your town and community council, then you need to declare it as a personal.
Thank you for that, Kelly. Councillor Mark John?
Yeah, I think that clarification gave it. I'm on the Board of Governors of Brinketton Junior School, so I think Kelly's clarification just given that.
Thank you. I'll go on to number 3 then. Medium-term Financial Strategy 2025 to 26 and 2028 to 29. I will now ask the Chief Officer, Finance, Housing and Change Policy to present this report, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Just for the sake of the recording, I'm Caris Lord and I'm the Chief Officer for Finance, Housing and Change. Before I actually start to present this report, I wonder, Madam Mayor, if you just allow me to thank all of the team in Finance who worked so hard to provide you with the information and the details which have been needed to be able to bring these final budget proposals to you. In particular, can I give my thanks to Deb Exton, who's my deputy, sat next to me, and also to my two group managers, Joe Norman and Nigel Smith, who provided so much support through this budget setting process.
You preempted me. I was actually going to mention it, but go ahead. They can mention they need all the recognition they can get. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the purpose of this report is to present to Council the medium-term financial strategy for the period 2025-26 through to 2028-29. This includes a financial forecast for that period, also a detailed revenue budget for the coming financial year, and a capital programme for the period 2024-25 through to 2034-35. So if I may, Madam Mayor, financial strategy. So the Council's corporate plan is aligned to this strategy with explicit links between the Council's wellbeing objectives and the resources directed to support them. The medium-term financial strategy details a number of issues, including the 13 key principles and detailed assumptions which drive the Council's budget and spending decisions, the financial context within which the Council is now operating, and also tries to mitigate any financial risks and pressures going forward, whilst at the same time taking advantage of any opportunities that may arise. So the strategy focuses on how the Council intends to respond to the increasing pressures on public sector services. The pressures being experienced in this Council are reflected right across the public sector in Wales and beyond. Over the last few years, these pressures have been unprecedented and are impacting on all services across this local authority. The strategy details the approaches and principles the Council will follow to ensure it remains financially sustainable and it delivers on its corporate wellbeing objectives. It is a legal requirement under the provisions of the Local Government Finance Act 1992 that the Council approves a balanced budget and sets the council tax rate for the county borough for the coming financial year. This report sets out proposals to achieve that objective and to contribute towards a sustainable financial position going into the medium term. The long-term financial sustainability of the Council is an important issue, and Audit Wales have confirmed that this will continue to be an area of focus for them in their work in the coming year, as they have recently published a national report on financial sustainability in local authorities across Wales. The quarterly reports to Cabinet and the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the projected revenue position for this financial year have outlined in detail the impact on the budget of the significant pressures faced by the Council throughout the year. The Council has experienced an increase in demand for services, together with increased costs as a result of the worsening economic climate, inflation and interest rates. These have been reflected in rising prices, higher than anticipated pay increases, and significant tender price increases for goods and services. At the same time, the Council has seen a significant reduction in the level of grants received from Welsh Government over recent years. The financial position for the Council has changed during the current financial year. At the end of Q2, the projected overspend for the current financial year was £6.7 million. At the end of Q3, the outturn for the year was projected to be an underspend of 6.8 million. Within these figures, there remains a projected overspend by services of 7 million, whilst the council-wide budgets are predicted to underspend this year. This change in position is partly due to the recent notification of a number of additional grants totaling over £3.3 million towards pay awards from the Welsh Government following the autumn budget. It is also due to a council-approved change in our policy for financing our capital, a lower drawdown on contingencies, and also the maximisation of other grants against service costs where that has been possible. It must be noted that this position is masking some of the record pressures that still exist in directorate budgets and will continue into 2025-26. While some of these additional pressures are not recurrent, a number will become core pressures for the Council going forward, and these are reflected in the medium-term financial strategy. The final financial settlement for local government in Wales is not due to be debated by the Senedd until the 4th of March. Therefore, this budget is being proposed on the basis of the provisional settlement which we received in December 2024. Changes in the final settlement and possible additional funding will be reported to Council in due course, but those changes will not impact on the Council tax level. In finalising the strategy and the budget for the coming year, estimates have been made which take into account circumstances and events which exist or are reasonably foreseeable at the time of preparing this budget. The budget has been prepared following consultation with elected members, the School Budget Forum, service managers and the public. Subject to the risks identified, the strategy provides a firm basis for managing the Council's resources for the coming financial year and beyond. So if I may, Madam Mayor, I'll just take you to Annex 3, which is the detailed medium-term financial strategy, in order to draw members' attention to some of the key information within this document. Section 1 of the strategy includes a financial overview of the Council. Members will be aware that this Council has had to make budget reductions in previous years, and that budget reductions of almost £88.4 million have been found since 2010-2011. These details are shown for you in Chart 1 in your pack, which is page 39. These cuts have not been made equally across all service areas. However, in total, they do represent almost 20% of the Council's current net budget. The Council receives the majority of its revenue funding from Welsh Government through the Revenue Support Grant and a share of the non-domestic rates. This is supplemented through the Council tax collection, other grants and fees and charges. It is important to note that the Council tax currently only accounts for 28% of the net budget for this Council. In Section 2 of the strategy, further context is provided for you, detailing both financial and non-financial information which has shaped the financial position of the Council. In real terms, Welsh Government funding has fallen year on year since 2012-2013, with an increasing element of the budget having to be funded by Council tax. And again, you can see that on page 44 of your report. Planning for the financial year 2025-26 has been more challenging than usual due to the exceptional issues already referred to in the current financial year. Due to the continuing pressures presenting themselves, there are fewer opportunities to reduce services in a climate that requires more support for our older and more vulnerable members of society, and with a substantial increase in demand being experienced for many services. In addition, there are higher expectations on the Council to address homelessness more robustly on a longer-term sustainable basis, and more pressure to strengthen and support social care, which is experiencing increased demand and costs, as well as more complex cases in both adults and children's services. As in previous years, further efforts have been made to secure greater involvement of stakeholders in the development of this strategy. This has included a 3-week consultation with residents of Bridgend, which was undertaken between the 6th and the 26th of January this year. The emphasis of this was to seek citizens' thoughts on how we should address the budget situation to enable the Council to review and prioritise the budget. The outcome of that consultation process was reported to Cabinet on the 18th of February, and the details are contained for you in Table 5 of the strategy. Cabinet and Corporate Management Board have continued working with the Research and Evaluation Panel to facilitate the budget planning process. The draft budget report, approved by Cabinet in January this year, has subsequently been very well scrutinised by the Council scrutiny committees, resulting in a report to Cabinet on the 3rd of February from the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, outlining a number of recommendations. Cabinet has considered these, which include recommendations from the Budget Research and Evaluation Panel, and a response to these questions is provided in Appendix A for you this afternoon.
The responses received from the public consultation and from discussions with and recommendations from the Budget Research and Evaluation Panel and scrutiny committees have been considered, and the proposed budget is based on those comments and the responses received. This budget has prioritised a number of things: safeguarding and protecting our most vulnerable citizens, encouraging residents and communities to support themselves wherever possible, ensuring that all services are as efficient as they can be, seeking to move to a full cost recovery model for our services where we are able to do so, and also ensuring the longer-term financial sustainability of this authority. Details of the proposed budgets for individual services are given for you in section 2.4 of the strategy. In section 3, the current financial situation is outlined for members. With regards to the provisional local government settlement, the headline figure was an overall increase of 4.3% across Wales, and for Bridgend, there was an increase of 4% for the coming financial year. Since publication of the provisional settlement, Welsh Government have identified a small flaw in the settlement comparisons for this year, and as a result, the updated comparison is still 4.3% across Wales, but it is now a 3.9% increase for Bridgend. Based on those updated figures, the range of uplift across Wales varied from 2.6% to 4.9%. For Bridgend, this increase of 3.9% results in a £10.6 million increase in funding after the specific transfers have been taken into account. This was the 13th highest increase across all Welsh local authorities, and again that's illustrated for you at chart 4 this afternoon. The strategy also models the financial position for the authority for the next 4 years, based on the latest information available from Welsh Government. Welsh Government has not given an indication of the possible settlement figures for the period after 25-26. The current financial outlook is that future settlements are likely to be challenging for local authorities, as the new monies Welsh Government received from the autumn statement have been allocated in 24-25 and into 25-26. As a result, there is likely to be a 0% change to the funding for local government after 2025-26. So the financial forecast for the period up to 2029 is predicated on assumptions regarding demographic projections, inflationary pressures, the impact of new legislation and policies, and also increasing staffing costs. In developing these estimates, the strategy contains assumptions with regards to possible council tax increases going forward. Due to the pressures already outlined, it is proposed to increase council tax by 4.5% in 2025-26. If council tax did not increase, the council would need to make further budget reductions of around £4.9 million to balance the budget, in addition to the £8.3 million that's already detailed in your papers. For planning purposes, it's been assumed that the council tax will increase by 4.5% in each year from 26-27 through to 2028-29. I have to stress that these figures are for planning purposes only, and they will be reviewed every time the medium-term financial strategy is updated. Together with the indicative funding from Welsh Government, it is estimated that there will be a budget reduction requirement of £39.5 million to be met over this period. And those scenarios again are detailed for members at table 7 in your report. The Council's corporate risk assessment identifies the key corporate risks and mitigating actions, and again it's included within your papers. This was updated in January, and the level of overall risk for the authority remains high, which reflects the current service and financial demands that the Council is having to address. The revised corporate risk assessment was considered by the Governance and Audit Committee in January. These risks have been taken into account with the preparation of this strategy, and that again is attached in your papers this afternoon. Section 4 of the strategy outlines in more detail the budget position for the coming financial year. The net budget requirement for next year is detailed at table 9 of this report, which shows a net budget of £383.3 million. The proposed allocation of this budget across all services is detailed for members at table 10, which is page 72 of your report. The table details the funding pressures and the savings to be made by each directorate. This year, an additional table has been included in the strategy outlining the net increase in funding for schools, which is proposed for next year. Whilst a budget reduction of 1% is included in this budget, there is an overall increase in funding for schools of £7.9 million, as the Council will continue to meet all additional costs resulting from teachers' pay and pension rises, other inflationary increases, and the increased costs resulting in an increase in the non-domestic rates that our schools have to pay. That's detailed for you in Table 12 on page 74. When the draft budget was presented in January 2025, there was uncertainty regarding whether the additional costs associated with the increase of employers' NI would have to be funded by this authority. The cost of this increase for staff directly employed by this council is estimated to be £4.7 million, and it has been assumed that this funding will be met by Welsh Government, although this will not be confirmed until the spring. The position with regards to the funding for the increase for commissioned providers remains uncertain, and therefore a provision has been made within the proposed budget to fund that pressure. In summary, the keynotes to point for the coming financial year are, within this budget, financial pressures of over £23.9 million are funded for the coming year. And that includes £9.5 million to meet pay and price inflation, and then £14.4 million of service cost pressures. And these include £9.4 million to fund recurrent base budget pressures. These relate to inescapable pressures in the current year, which services are not going to be able to reduce. And then a further £5 million for emergent pressures. So the increase in funding by way of pressures for each directorate, excluding pay and price, is for education and early years and young people, £2.7 million, for social care and wellbeing, £8.8 million, for communities, £1.5 million, for chief executives, £1 million, and for the council-wide budget, £391,000. This funding is supporting some of the more significant pressures that the council is facing, including costs associated with supporting and protecting our most vulnerable residents, especially children, support for children with additional learning needs, funding to meet contractual price increases, especially home-to-school transport, increased costs of commissioned services in the social care sector following the 5% increase in the real living wage. And it also includes an increase in the Fire and Rescue Authority's levy on this council to meet their pay and price increases. Members can find the details regarding those cost pressures in Appendix C. In order to balance the budget, reductions of £8.3 million have been identified. Some of these have been approved by Cabinet or Council during the financial year, and they're shown for you at Table 13. Since the draft strategy was presented to Cabinet in January, the savings have been reviewed, and savings relating to the school music service have been removed from the final budget proposals. Therefore, the savings have been reduced by £726,000, which has been funded using the small amount of unallocated funded monies available within the draft budget. So in summary, the savings for each directorate are, for education, early years and young people, £1.4 million, for schools, £1.2 million, social care and wellbeing, £1.8 million, communities, £717,000, chief executives, £688,000, and council-wide, £2.5 million. Details of all of those proposed budget savings are attached at Appendix D. Members will be aware that South Wales Fire and Rescue Authority is funded by raising a levy on its constituent councils based on population. Within the medium-term financial strategy, reference is made to this at paragraph 4123. The levy payable for the coming financial year by Bridgend is £9.5 million. This is an increase of £391,000 or 4.3% above our allocation for this year. And just to remind members that this increase has to be paid for by Bridgend County Borough Council's council tax. The council does raise income via fees and charges, and these are reviewed on an annual basis. New charges or charges that have been included in the 25-26 budget and are above the general increase are detailed for you in Appendix E. As well as the revenue budget, this strategy also deals with the proposed capital programme for the period 2024-2025 through to 2034-35. This 10-year programme has been revised during this financial year to bring it up to date and to take into account new capital schemes as they have been identified. Within the Welsh Government Provisional Settlement for the coming financial year, £8.6 million is being made available to support capital expenditure. Due to the limited capital finances available, services have not been asked to submit bids for funding at this stage. In addition to limited funding levels, there are significant pressures within the capital programme overall, which have been reported to members during this year. And they include increased prices of materials, supply chain difficulties, which we continue to experience, and the inability to recruit to key posts, both here within the council, but also within the companies that we work with, which are resulting in higher wages and higher contract prices. The capital programme contains a number of annual allocations totalling £5.2 million that are met from the total general capital funding for the council. The proposed allocation for these for 25-26 is shown in Table 15 of your report. The only proposed change to these is to increase the allocation for disabled facilities grants to enable the council to support more people to remain in their own homes. Within today's report, there are two changes proposed to the current capital programme, which are to fund the Bridgend West School development and to utilise a Welsh Government grant relating to electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Within the Welsh Government's draft budget, there was reference to the introduction of a Highways Management Local Government Borrowing Initiative. Through this initiative, Welsh Government indicated that they would be investing recurrent revenue monies to enable local authorities to self-finance some capital funding, which was to be spent on highways management and fixing our local roads. The final details of how much of that funding will be allocated to Bridgend Council has not yet been received. However, we have had indicative figures since the provisional settlement has been released, which indicates a total of £120 million of borrowing across Wales, which will be supported over the next 2 years. That funding will come in over the next 2 years. Once we have the confirmed details of that funding, we will report that through on the capital programme. Any further new proposals for capital funding will be considered in light of and in line with the proposed capital strategy for the period up to 2035 and will be brought back to Council for approval at a later date. So the current revised capital programme is outlined for you at Appendix G. In accordance with the Council's Reserves and Balances Protocol, a review of the Council's reserves is undertaken at regular intervals. Members will find a breakdown of the movement in the reserves at Appendix H of today's report. It's important to note that the level of earmarked reserves held by this authority is falling. So in 2021-22, at the end of 21-22, we had £106 million of earmarked reserves. You'll see in the report in Table 16 that at the end of December last year, this had dropped to £61 million. And I would stress that 80% of that is actually supporting our capital programme. And we do anticipate that there will be drawdown of a number of reserves during the final 2 months of this year, because there is money in the reserves to fund capital programmes, which will need to be funded at the end of this year. And we are also drawing down some money from directed earmarked reserves, which was planned. So in line with the reserves protocol, a further review will be undertaken at the end of the current financial year, and transfers will be made at this point, taking account of the overall financial position for the council, including the final outturn position on our revenue account, our actual council tax income, our earmarked reserves level, the council fund level, and also any new pressures or risks that need to be provided for. A summary of the earmarked reserves, as I said, is shown at Table 16. It is essential that the council fund balance, which is currently at £9.7 million, is managed in accordance with the Strategy Principle 9, which states that the council fund balance should be set at a prudent but not excessive level. It should normally be maintained at a level of 5% of the council's net budget, excluding schools. Currently, our council fund is sitting below that 5%. As the Council Section 151 officer, I am required to report annually on the robustness of the level of reserves. I can confirm that I believe the level of council reserves is currently sufficient to protect the council in light of unknown demands or emergencies, and also our current funding levels. However, the level of these reserves has to be monitored very closely, and we will be reporting any changes to those levels if they are a matter of concern back to Cabinet and Council. And just to stress, it is essential that both the revenue and capital expenditure contained within the proposed budgets for the coming year are they are maintained within those budgets. So finally, with regards to the council tax, the proposed budget of 383.338 million shown in table 10 of your report can be balanced with an increase in the council tax of 4.5% for the coming financial year. This level of increase is needed to enable the council to set a balanced budget. It takes into account the current budget position, the already significant levels of service reductions that will be required, and ongoing budget pressures. And also it takes account of the challenging financial forecast going forward. The final section of the strategy provides information on the council's longer-term financial outlook. This is not intended to be a 10-year budget strategy due to the number of variables that impact on our financial position. However, it does provide a financial framework to reference against when preparing both annual and longer-term financial plans. So if I may, Madam Mayor, could I refer you to the recommendations at section 9 of the covering report for the medium-term financial strategy? Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very detailed and thorough report. Can I have a mover and seconder, please?
I'll formally move, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Members have been advised by Caris that an amended budget has been submitted in accordance with the Constitution. Can I have a mover and seconder for the alternative budget to be put forward, please?
Move, please.
Second, please, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Right, would you like to give us your reasons for this alternative budget, please? Councillor Williams, would you like to start?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'm conscious that it is a hand up, so I didn't know if they were intending to come in.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch then, Councillor Williams.
So you've got a hand up. I didn't know if they wanted to come in.
Oh, I see what you mean. No. I'm sorry, Mr. Harvey is blocking. I do beg your pardon.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. That's lovely. Thank you very much. Could you be all right? Yeah. Could we be succinct? And we're trying to get everything through because I know there's going to be a lot of people wanting to answer questions. So you could say about 3 minutes and we'll go from there.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll try my best because Kelly told me I had 5.
Oh, right.
So, yeah. So. Our amendment. So throughout the budget setting process, it has been incredibly difficult to listen to head teachers about the precarious situations within our schools. This amendment seeks to recognise the importance of our obligations to keep our children safe and seeks to protect the school's counselling service and reduce the cut from 1% to 0.5% of the school's delegated budgets. In 2011, Wales became the first country in the UK to make the UNCRC part of its domestic law. Under Article 24 of the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, every child has the right to the best possible standards of healthcare and to access facilities for the treatment of illness and rehabilitation. The School Health Research Network found from their survey of secondary school-aged children in Wales in 2021-2022 that 46% reported mental health symptoms classed as at least slightly raised, with 24% reporting very high mental health symptoms. So the Youth Minds Matter report in November 22, published by Senedd, the Welsh Youth Parliament, recommended to Welsh Government embedding support for mental health and wellbeing into education, providing better support at an earlier stage to lower the demand on CAMHS. And that came across too in our scrutiny meetings that we've had, and the head teachers we've met with, the children and the support staff in schools have all shared that as a big concern with us. I know head teachers who've had to make decisions over which child gets counselling services, and one child has lost out. So the biggest concern for us obviously is if you take 24% of counselling services away from our children in our schools, that's going to have a detrimental effect. So basically, our group stressed that we believe that difficult decisions must be made due to the limited access to resources and information available to the opposition. We've had a very short timescale to make an amendment, so that's all we've been able to do is make an amendment to the budget that was put forward. So our choices in this have been to protect our children, teachers and head teachers as best we can, and given the constraints upon us. So the two areas that we have been looking to protect were school counselling services retained in full in recognition of the mental health crisis, and a reduction in cut from 1.186 million to 593,000 to schools' delegated budgets. So we've set out in the paperwork how we propose to do this. I don't know if you want me to be succinct, if you want me to read through that, or if you're content for people to read it.
I think most people have had it. We have all had it, thank you.
Right, okay. So we took all of these proposals from what had already been put forward by directors, and I believe had been looked at by the administration, and we chose the areas that we would, as our group, would prefer to see cut, rather than the cut to schools and the cut to mental health and to counselling services. So that's ours in brief. Thank you.
Councillor Ian Spiller, would you like to comment on that any more?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I'll try and keep my succinct because hopefully my bandwidth will allow me to carry on. I think Councillor Amanda Williams has really summarised that very well. To say, unfortunately, that difficult decisions have to be made, I think is, across the board, and we fully appreciate that when looking at items through scrutiny, and we understand the difficult job the Cabinet have to obviously put a budget together. In saying that, what we have been able to do is look at ways in which we can generate additional revenue, ways in which we can look to save in future years to obviously protect the here and now. And I will stress that the mental health crisis that exists in our schools is a very, very real situation right here, right now, one that's growing completely since the pandemic, and one that's not showing any sign of slowing down. Now, given that, obviously, any cuts to the schools counselling service, really, I firmly believe, and my group believes, that should not happen. And I hope members from across the political spectrum and none can support this vital amendment and protect this incredibly important service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Are there any? Oh, Councillor Rees-Good. No? Councillor Simon Griffiths, please.
Madam, can I just come in?
Yes, certainly.
Before we just get into the debate, members, if I can just remind all members that the debate and the questions at this stage are specifically on the amendments that have been put forward by Councillor Amanda Williams. So if you can tailor your questions to those amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Griffiths.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I listened with care to what was suggested there, and obviously there's some changes there which we would all like, but we are actually in a position of having some very difficult choices to make. And I understand from the broader aspect of the suggestion that there are actually some school closures which are recommended in part of the cost savings. So I'd like to direct a question to the Director for Education, please, about whether those school closures and which schools will close as a result of this prospective amendment, please.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor. We haven't been specific on the names of the schools, but we've noticed small schools. So again, you can determine the schools that we are focused on. There's a challenge here with regard to the Welsh Government guidance at the moment. It does protect small and rural schools, and that's a very clear part of the Welsh Government guidance. In any school closure, we would need to undertake a formal options appraisal for anything we decide to materially change a school. For example, whether or not we would maintain the school, whether or not we would close the school, or indeed change it to a federation, and we would need to demonstrate that we can explore all options in doing that. So realistically, if we were to move that forward, the earliest a school could be closed would be in the region of September 27. So obviously that wouldn't affect the next budget round. It's fair to say, and again, I've been doing this job a long time, there would be a significant challenge from the community, as we always see when we attempt to look at this type of proposal. And again, I think the challenge would be is that we'd have to look at additional costs with regard to transport costs. So there would be revenue implications with regard to that. And there would be indeed additional capital costs if we were needing to remodel or build additional accommodation in the receiving schools. So I can't see there being any significant or any indeed meaningful saving being created in the next financial cycle on this, Councillor.
Thank you, Lindsay. Councillor Rees-Good, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I just want to take the opportunity while I have the floor to thank Caris and the team because I think we all know that they do a sterling job every year and a huge amount of work behind the scenes, both on the administration budget and on the opposition's amendment to get stuff to this council, which is really an incredible piece of work that takes a huge amount of time and effort. I'd also like to say that I welcome the opposition's engagement in this budget. I think it is really important that the opposition does provide some alternatives to our budget. It's an important part of democracy. So I think that it's great to see that the opposition have engaged in that this year for the first time. But at the end of the day, this amendment is a kick it down the road amendment. It isn't going to change the realities of tough decisions that have to be made. And in fact, will just reduce the amount of reserves that this authority has in future years. And as Caris has already noted in her opening remarks, we're already at a point which is below a desirable level of reserves. So I would just like to ask the Leader of the Opposition really, what would be the plan if this amendment were to pass for the next year? How are we going to fund it next year? How do we ensure that this amendment, while I am certain comes from absolutely the right place, and I know the Leader of the Opposition is tremendously committed to our schools, and I really appreciate that, but I think what we have a duty to do is to make sure that schools aren't left with a short, sharp shock suddenly out of nowhere. And that's my concern for this, that if we keep kicking it down the road and keep kicking it down the road, at a few years' time, they will find themselves in a far worse place and not see it coming. At least while there are changes to their budgets this year that I know none of us would want to make in a perfect world, but at least they can see it and plan for it. So I just wanted to ask the opposition how they would look at this in the following year if once reserves have gone. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Good. Councillor Eugene Kaparis, please.
Councillor Williams is going to respond to that question.
Councillor Amanda Williams, would you like to respond now?
Thank you very much for the question. Now, firstly, obviously, we've been sat here with budgets and we've had proposals put forward, like the Blue Badge scheme, that has been one that's been ongoing for many years, that hasn't been progressed, and we've been waiting year on year for the results of that to come out and the consultation. So any budget, any MTFS has got things in it that could be classed as kicking it down the road, that doesn't materialise in the following year. When it comes to budgets now, if you look at the consultation, the public, it was the second highest thing the public wanted to save was the schools and the cuts to schools. Schools are in crisis at the moment, and I raised that I've got a personal interest with regards to Coity, and if I can give an example, 105% of the budget in Coity Primary School is spent on staff costs. And that's a full, all classrooms are full. There is nowhere for schools like this to go. So even the 0.5% gives them a bit of breathing space for a year. And that's what head teachers have told us. There's Pencoed head teacher has said, if this cut goes ahead, what's the point? You might as well leave. And we don't want to see some of these head teachers, these extremely hard-working head teachers, leaving. So we need to make sure, that's why we've put this budget forward, to give them that breathing space, to say we're listening to you. And then I'm hoping, as we said, that we've had last-minute conversations, and I'm very, very grateful to Caris and Deb for giving up so much time to us when they've been extremely busy. But I would like to see BREP, and I would like to see us as opposition groups have the opportunity to meet as soon as this new budget gets passed, so that we can work going forward on options.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Eugene Kaparos, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering if the financial officer could advise us on the implications of this in her professional opinion. I am aware, obviously, that schools are in a terrible state, as are we, and it's very difficult to have to manage any sort of cuts. Now, there are no easy cuts or efficiencies to be gained, hence why there's £14.5 million of budget pressures for schools and supporting vulnerable children and adults, £726,000 to keep the music service, and backed up with £143 million capital investment in schools. With the ask made by this amendment, can you guarantee us that this will not require larger cuts in future or higher council tax for residents?
Caris, please.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Kaparos. You'll see that I've done a note which I think has also come out to all members with my statement on it, which is factual with regards to what that means for the council. I think some of the key issues have probably already been discussed. It's when we're setting this budget, there are always risks in whichever budget you put forward, and it's about managing the risks for the council. So I think people have already mentioned about pressures, and I think I outlined when I introduced the report that there's money going into those pressures in our base budget now, which, to be fair, services are unlikely to be able to meet in the current year. So there's proposal to try and support the budget to make sure that it's a good budget going forward, and I think it does mitigate that. I think one of the risks for me is that use of the earmarked reserve. It is only a small amount in this year, and I accept that. But as I've also already said, the reserves are dropping quite heavily for this authority. And whereas I did present to you that at the moment I think they are sufficient and we can manage our financial risks, we don't want to keep pulling down on them because we will be in jeopardy if we move on for a few years. So I think my advice would just that when you're thinking about this is to think about the risks, and also to think about the long-term position, because we don't know what the Welsh Government settlement is going to be post-25-26. Current analysts are saying that it's going to be very challenging. So there's also something about having in mind here that we protect what we've got going forward, because I think you'll also see that we need to find approximately £10 million savings already in the years that are coming towards us. So we would just need to be certain that the alternatives that have been put in here, we can work on them, and they need to be achieved by April 2026.
Thank you, Caris. Councillor Ross Thomas, please.
Diolch, Madam Mayor. My concerns are more around process and procedure here. So can we agree that the constitution of this council has actually been found wanting in this process, in the unprecedented situation of an alternative proposal being put forward? So I place no blame on officers, nor on Bridgend County independent colleagues. We are working within the rules that we've set out. Those rules are clearly, in my view, not fit for purpose. I actually believe there to be a narrative worthy of dialogue, worthy of scrutiny among the alternative proposals that have been put forward. Nonetheless, those options that have been put forward haven't been afforded the opportunity of detailed discussion, quality impact assessments, nor elected member scrutiny, nor public consultation. So can we please have a commitment that the Constitution and its rules around the budget setting process to better enable these proposals to come forward at an earlier point in time in the budget setting process? Can we actually have a commitment that that budget setting process is reviewed, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross. I'll fetch Kelly in now, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We'll certainly look at that, and if any members have any proposals, please send them to me, and as always, I'll bring a report to the AGM in May to discuss any proposals I've received during the course of the year.
Thank you, Kelly. Councillor Graham Walker, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And may I associate myself with the comments made by Councillor Rees-Good earlier in welcoming an alternative. I'd like to focus in particular on the proposal, the suggestion of closing these offices from 5 days down to 4, with a saving quoted of £50,000. Can I ask either Councillor Amanda Williams or the relevant officer how that amount has been calculated and whether, in fact, it takes into account any capital costs associated with making such a change? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll fetch in Janine, please.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. For the purposes of the recording, I'm Janine Nightingale, the Corporate Director for Communities. Thank you, Councillor, for that. The amount that's put in that we did look at, but obviously discounted as a saving, is based on the utility cost of running this building, keeping this building open on a day. So basically it was, if anything, a very crude indication of a saving that could come forward. However, what it didn't include, that was just the revenue saving that could be sought from having this building closed, for instance, on a Friday. What it didn't include was the capital costs of doing that. So what we know we would have to do is we'd have to look at the access system, because we have our MASH colleagues now who are situated on floor 4. We'd also have to look at separating heating and lighting controls in order that we could heat and light that area for the MASH away from the rest of the building. So when we looked at that saving and put it forward to our Cabinet colleagues, we realised that the cost of actually doing that to the building would far outweigh any saving that could flow from it. So that saving was discounted at that point, probably about 6 or 7 months ago. So the saving you see is just the saving on utilities over the year if we closed one day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Martin Williams, please.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Point of order.
Yeah, and what is the point of order?
I'd like to move that the question now be put. Motion without notice.
I've only got 6 left. I've been advised by Kelly to take them, and then we'll go to the vote. All right, Councillor Martin Williams, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a question to Councillor Amanda Williams, and then I perhaps would like the leader's opinion of it. Obviously, Councillor Williams, you've, as part of this budget, there's a proposal to reduce the cost of senior salaries. That's to reduce the Cabinet from 7 to the 6 that it was for many years, to remove the remuneration, enhanced remuneration for the Deputy Mayor, and to remove the remuneration for the Appeals Panel Chair, a committee that meets very rarely. Could I ask you, please, Councillor Williams, how you arrived at that, and why that's in the proposal? And then, as an adjunct to that, then I'd value the leader's opinion on those proposals, please.
Would you like to answer that, please?
Thank you very much. Would you like me, because I know the previous question was also put potentially to me as well. I didn't know if you wanted me to come back on that as well.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, it's just that obviously Janine has detailed it. So when it came to us, I think it was said that it came to Cabinet about 7 months ago. We had these proposals back in January, so we've been working on this information, and we weren't given any additional information as to why it was discounted by Cabinet, but that was exactly my argument, as we get this information later in the day than the administration, and we're having to look at everything and pull things together last minute. So coming back to this one, it flows into this. Those proposals, we understand, were also put forward. Some of these proposals, the reduction of the Cabinet was put forward to the Cabinet, and I'm assuming then it was 7 months ago when all of the other plans were put forward, or it might have been later than that. So that's why we've included it in here, and we've included it because, for me, when it comes to, on one hand, the mental health and the safety of our children, or funding us members, I will always go for the children. We lost two school children who took their own lives in the last school year, and I just think to reduce the counselling services is only going to potentially worsen the situation, and I couldn't live with myself knowing that a child was thinking of even self-harming when we're not willing to make those cuts ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Stephen Bledsoe, please. Sorry?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, the leader didn't answer the question.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realise that. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm quite happy to answer the question. I can't exactly recall what item may have been in there regarding members. It might have been framed under democratic services. It wasn't 34,000, but there may have been items in there that have not been progressed. And the whole issue about the cabinet and numbers, we have one of the smallest cabinets in Wales. But there are remuneration every year that can be looked at. I know the chair of the appeals panel hasn't taken allowance. I don't know if she made that public because she felt bullied into that from some negative comments that come across from the Bryan County Independent Party earlier this year, or last year, sorry, criticising her for not having any meetings. She felt bullied into not taking her allowance. She hasn't taken that. But I will also pose the question to the leader, Councillor Amanda Williams, of the largest opposition group, who obtains an allowance of nearly £10,000 for being leader of a group, and could quite easily chair a scrutiny committee and save £10,000. So I'd put that question back. Why is that not in the proposal? Because the narrative in the budget says any review should be on the basis of the workload of the relevant post. Well, the leader of the largest opposition group gets nearly a £10,000 allowance. It doesn't have to do a great deal for it.
Thank you, Councillor Spencer. Councillor Stephen Bledsoe, please. Councillor Bledsoe.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for taking the questions. Why anybody would propose truncating a debate around such an important matter is simply beyond me, so thank you for taking my question. I would like to make reference, and I would like to direct my question to Caris, please. I would like to make reference to the debate where it was made that this is a budget to push things down the road. This is not a budget to push things down the road. There are proposals to replace and replenish any dip into the unallocated reserves that have been stress tested, checked, and proved to be balanced and lawful. There were proposals originally put forward by the small working group to try and realise some of the savings within this year. When we took advice and we realised that some of those weren't possible, we used it in reverse, so took it from the reserves and replaced it in next year, which would give the officers more time. Councillor Amanda Williams has already made reference to the fact that not this budget, not the last budget, but the budget before that, this council approved a budget which had savings of £50,000 to charge blue badge holders to park in car parks. That saving has still not been realised. So when we're talking about kicking things down the road, we need to have a sense of reality here. So what I would like to ask Caris is, can she confirm that the budget that was put forward as an amendment by Bridgend County Independents is fully balanced, fully lawful, and replenishes any dip into the reserves in a structured way that allows officers to realise the savings? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Bledsoe. Caris, would you like to come back on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bledsoe, for your questions and your comments. Is the alternative budget balanced? Yes, it is balanced. Is it lawful? Yes, it's lawful, and you'll see from my comments in my note that that's obviously one of the things that I checked before it came through to you tonight for consideration. It's balanced and it's lawful. What it is doing is drawing down 300 and something thousand from reserves, and you do have proposals in there for next year. But we obviously need to be able to deliver on those, and I guess if your alternative budget is agreed, then that would become a priority for next year. But I don't know that you are replenishing the reserves from the proposal that you've put forward, because you will need those savings that you've put forward in order to meet the gap, which is currently going to be funded by the reserve, but it won't overcover and put all of that money back into reserves. I accept it's only a small amount, though.
Thank you, Kelly. Councillor Ian Williams, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In response to Councillor Good implying that schools would find themselves suffering from a shock if funding was to suddenly be taken from them, could I ask the Cabinet member for Education to please let me know what is the total amount of cuts to the education budget in the last 3 years, if you include this year's proposed cut. So that's 22, 23, 23, 24, 25.
Councillor Williams.
Sorry.
Is this directly concerning the amendment or?
How much funding has been cut from the school's delegated budget since May 2022? 6 million, I put it up.
Councillor Williams.
6 million. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. I'll take Councillor Melanie Evans and Councillor Jane Gerbie, and I think we've all had a fair share. Councillor Melanie Evans, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Mine is just with regards to the comment made by Councillor Amanda Williams with regards to the head of Pencoed, and therefore I just need to declare a personal interest, please, because I am a governor at Pencoed Comprehensive.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jane Gerbie, which will be the last speaker, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's just some clarity from Lindsay, please. Lindsay, could you tell me, please, whether the savings to be removed from the BCI proposed alternative budget ED1 can be achieved within that time frame, please, as Caris has just referred to. So the proposed to close small schools as they become more and more unviable, indicative for 26-27 is £239,000. Would we be able to achieve that saving in that time frame, please?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Deputy Leader. Not in its entirety, no.
Thank you very much. I will fetch in Councillor Martin Jones, as he is the Cabinet Member for Education, and he will be the last speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And can I thank Councillor Ian Williams for his question? I'm sorry I don't have to hand data for the last 6 years, but I will certainly try and get that information for you in the short term. Now, I welcome the debate in relation to education because, of course, yes, the public consultation just reinforces one thing. It is high on the list of public concern. But let's just park that and put this into context. At the moment, the budget for the Education Directorate is 150 million plus every year. That equates to nearly over 39% of the entire council revenue budget. And I'm afraid, colleagues, the long-term prognosis is that is going up. Of the 150 million plus, we devolve nearly £126 million directly to the 60 schools. We spend, on behalf of the taxpayer of the County Borough of Bridgend, nearly £1 million a month on home-to-school transport. So I think for us, it's about. I need to emphasise.
I know, but it's not on the amendment.
Okay, but I want to emphasise the point here. There is a bigger picture here, and the amendment suggests that we put in nearly £500,000 in. What we need to be thinking, on a cross-party basis, is how we can seek to reduce the costs, but at the same time maintain the high levels of education that we provide across the county borough. That's the big debate I think we should be having, and I think, Madam Mayor, that addresses some of the amendment that's been presented here this afternoon.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. We'll now go on to voting on the amendment then, please. Is it a yay or a nay?
Yay. All in favour?
Yay. Move on recorded vote.
Recorded vote.
We'll go on to a vote, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members, just to confirm, if you are in agreement to accepting the amendment, it's a yes. If you don't accept the amendment, it's a no.
Thank you. Going alphabetically, I will start Councillor Anthony Barrow.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Bledsoe.
Yes.
Councillor John Paul Blundell.
No.
Councillor Eugene Caparros.
No.
Councillor Nora Clark.
No, Rachel, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Collins.
No.
Councillor Hugh David.
No.
Councillor Chris Davis.
Abstention.
Thank you. Councillor Colin Davis.
No.
Councillor Paul Davis.
No.
Councillor Stephen Easterbrook.
Yes.
Councillor Melanie Evans.
No.
Councillor Neil Farr.
No.
Councillor Paula Ford.
No.
Councillor Jane Gebby.
No.
Councillor Rhys Good.
No.
Councillor Richard Granville.
No.
Councillor Heather Griffiths.
No.
Councillor Simon Griffiths.
No.
Councillor Gary Haynes.
No.
Councillor David Harrison.
Yes.
Councillor Della Hughes.
No.
Councillor Martin Hughes.
No.
Councillor Malcolm James.
No.
Councillor Phil Jenkins.
No.
Councillor Mark John.
Yes.
Councillor Martin Jones.
No.
Councillor William Kendall.
No.
Councillor Maxine Lewis.
No.
Councillor Joanna Cran Hopkins.
No.
Councillor Jonathan Pratt.
No.
Councillor John Spanswick.
No.
Councillor Ian Spiller. Sorry, can you confirm Councillor Spiller again?
Apologies, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Ross Thomas.
No.
Councillor Tim Thomas.
Yes.
Councillor Jeff Tilsley.
No.
Councillor Graham Walter.
No.
Councillor Alan Wathen.
Yes.
Councillor Amanda Williams.
Yes.
Councillor Ian Williams.
Yes.
Councillor Martin Williams.
Yes, to protect the school budgets and the counselling service.
Councillor Howell Williams.
No.
Councillor Richard Williams.
No.
Councillor Elaine Winstanley.
No.
And Councillor Tim Wood.
Yes.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, it's a no against 32 to 12 with 1 abstention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The amendment fails. We'll go back to the original recommendations. Would the mover and seconder give the reasons, please? Howard?
Is it? Am I on now,
You
Madam
are
Mayor?
on, yes.
I'm on.
I hope so. Ready, set, go.
Right. I was a bit thrown earlier, Madam Mayor. I'm not quite sure if I was going to open or not. Right. So, can I begin by echoing Caritas' thanks to the team? You know, the team have worked extremely hard. Many hours, hundreds of hours of work have gone into producing this budget, well, they don't always get the recognition they deserve. It's been a fantastic team effort. This has. I'm going to start on the right side of my paper now. So yes, this budget has before us this afternoon is a result of many hours of and months of deliberation. I am concerned though, because 12 months ago there were concerns raised regarding the ability for all members to offer a meaningful contribution to the budget setting process. I felt then that was an unfair assessment of the process. However, Cabinet took on board the comments and looked to improve member engagement. I believe that this time we've improved that process markedly. Information shared with members during the year. The budget book for 24-25 was shared with all members in April 24. No comments or questions were received at that time. There was an all-member presentations on the latest budget position in July and in November. There was benchmarking report was shared with BREP members. And that's for members of the public listening. The BREP is a budget research and evaluation panel. It's a dedicated panel that's been set up to have a look at budget issues. Work on statutory and non-statutory services was shared with the BREP members. No comments or questions came forward from that piece of work. A cost centre detail was shared with group leaders and all BREP members. Again, no comments were received. And savings not taken forward by the Cabinet were shared with group leaders in January of this year. The facts demonstrate that there's been ample opportunity for all members to shape this budget. The draft budget presented by Cabinet on the 4th of February
has been thoroughly scrutinised by members, with 33 of the 38 recommendations accepted or partially accepted. This budget also takes into account the public consultation, which received 2,839 interactions. Madam Mayor, I very briefly outlined the process designed to provide opportunity to all members and residents of Bridgend County Borough Council to influence this council's mid-term financial strategy. The budget we have before us this afternoon aims to support the council's corporate plan and takes account of the challenging financial situation that this council faces. This budget invests £14 million in service delivery and seeks £9 million of reductions. Above all, Madam Mayor, this budget is balanced and robust and takes account of hundreds of hours of deliberation. This budget seeks to address the underlying financial pressures facing individual directorates. I must say, Madam Mayor, I'm in awe of our social services team. The pressures that they have faced in recent times have been extraordinary. My attendance at the Social Services Improvement Board has been an eye-opener. You wouldn't believe the trauma and disruption some families are facing. Social services will receive an extra £10 million from this budget to protect the most vulnerable residents of our county borough. Also, Madam Mayor, there's been much deliberation regarding education, and the Cabinet recognises the financial pressures facing an increased number of schools across the county borough. In this budget, spending on education will increase by more than £9 million, and that's £7.9 million direct to schools. They can spend on education close to £160 million. It's worth noting that schools' delegated funding, contrary to what Councillor Williams tried to raise earlier, has risen from £105 million in 22-23 to £126 million today. And if you want to take a 6-year average, I've got numbers, and they've been lifted from the council's budget book. You can go through that. It's all there. It's public record. It's lifted from 94 million in 1920 up to 113 million last year. That's an increase of 19 million. It's an increase of 19 million direct funding into schools. However, to address the concern regarding school funding, Cabinet are recommending establishing a working group made up of cross-party members where possible leaders of the main political groups and the relevant scrutiny chair, plus representatives from teaching staff, will come together to receive and comment on a Welsh Government piece of work looking at school funding, and then to review this council's funding for schools, because it's clear that the current method doesn't work for every school. We'll utilise this opportunity to provide support and assistance to our amazing teaching staff, who I'm pleased to say are delivering outcomes well in excess of the Wales average. I move the council budget at recommendation 9.
Thank you very much. Councillor John Spanswick, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And first, I say this is my first budget since being elected as leader of this authority in May last year. It's a position which I'm honoured to occupy, and I take extremely seriously in everything I do every day. But again, I'd like to thank Caris and her team, but also for all the work undertaken by all the other directors and their teams, because there's a massive team there below the directors that have to bring all this information together. So many thanks to everybody across the council for coming up with what we have before us today, which I believe is a fair budget for all services, and one that will serve the people of the County Borough of Bridgend, along with one of the lowest council tax rises in Wales at 4.5%, the lowest council tax rise in Wales, unlike some of the independent councils in Wales. Several months ago, we were faced with the prospect of a 0% settlement and some unthinkable cuts to services. But thankfully, with a Labour government now in Westminster and a Labour government in Wales, we could at long last start to repair the damage caused by 14 years of austerity. We can't do that overnight. We ended up, thankfully, with a 3.9% increase in our revenue support grant, and I've been able to put forward this budget today. Admittedly, still has some challenging budget reduction proposals, but also has base budget growth and emerging pressures being funded to the tune of around £14.5 million, one of the biggest growths we've had in budgets over many years in this council under a Labour administration. So we've listened to the young people, the parents and teachers who spoke up loudly about the proposed cut to music services of 726,000, and we will not be progressing this while accepting there's a need to look at how best the service can be remodelled in the future. I do take exception as well of being called stupid on social media for putting that cut forward as one of many cuts. It'd be nice to have an apology one day for being called stupid. Councillor Bledsoe. But we are supporting Bridgend schools and future generations. We are protecting the most vulnerable in communities. We are strengthening communities and protecting local services and investing in roads, homes and infrastructure. This is a balanced and responsible approach to public finances with a modest council tax increase of 4.5%, which is equivalent to an extra £1.59 per week for a Band D property. While it is accepted that future budget settlements may be even more challenging, I feel sure that this Bridgend County Borough Council budget for 25-26 not only meets immediate needs, but also lays the foundations for a prosperous and secure future for all residents of the county borough. And goodbye, Councillor Bledsoe.
Please attend to his apologies.
You have tendered your apologies. Yes. I know. Thank you. Councillor Sponsick, have you finished?
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. I've got another 8 councillors. The last one is Councillor Timothy Thomas, and I think we've had adequate debate on it then. Councillor Ian Williams, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor, just as a point, Councillor Spanswick, I won't be intimidated or bullied. You're welcome to try, but you won't be able to.
Order
I have a question for the leader.
Councillor Williams, we're not in a classroom.
I have a question for the leader, Madam Mayor.
If you ask it politely, yes.
Point of order, Chair.
Continue.
To the leader.
Point of order, please, Madam Mayor.
What is the point of order, please?
Point of order is we have a member who's speaking over yourself. So could we please look to see whether that member should remain in the room, please?
Can I raise a point of order to them, please, Madam Mayor?
I think we'll just draw a line here and we'll start again. Councillor Ian Williams, have you got a question?
I have a question for the leader.
Thank you.
Councillor Spanswick, are all your party councillors free to vote as they wish, even if they supported the amendment without any fear of sanction from your party?
I can give you 100% commitment that no person in this Labour Party administration has been whipped today on this vote. 100% commitment, nobody.
That's great to hear.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. There's a comment then from Councillor Waltham. Doesn't believe me. So you call me a liar? I think that's bringing this place into disrepute. Well, I don't lie.
Point of order, can we stop this? We've got a decision and we've got quite a full agenda here. We're not going to get anywhere. Right, Councillor Williams, you've had your answer. I'm moving on. Councillor Ross Thomas, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Well, this is interesting, Madam Mayor. Can I just first of all associate my first remarks with those of other colleagues who have thanked Caris and her financial officers in that directorate. It's not pretty work, it's hard work, and bringing that forward to council on an annual basis deserves recognition. So thank you for that. So here we are, Madam Mayor, summoned once again to the Council's annual budget meeting. It's something of a Groundhog Day moment because the balance sheets in front of us just aren't getting any better no matter what we try. While we can argue that the contents of the substantive budget in front of us today, until the cows come home, nobody could legitimately contend that it hasn't been through its fair share of scrutiny in the past couple of months. Like it or lump it, it's the budget in front of us has had a fair outing among elected members. Turning specifically to the content of that budget, it's clear in my mind that this council has unfortunately not seen the early dividends of 2 Labour governments working together at either end of the M4 in the way I had expected. Councillor Spanswick has spoken fondly of the future of this partnership, when actually the Chief Finance Officer pointed out that the future is bleak in terms of what we might expect in the next few years. Once again, local authorities are but bystanders, puppets even, Madam Mayor, of decisions made for us elsewhere. And to that end, I've sympathy with Cabinet members on the front bench in bringing forward the budget proposals today. Meanwhile, the chasm between discussions and decisions made in these meetings and real life outside of the four walls of civic offices grows all the more. Last year, I spoke of how fed up residents were, angry even. Fast forward 12 months, they're still angry. And how do I know? Well, they tell me. They tell you, they tell all of us as elected members. A flavour of some of the feedback I've had during the consultation phase, the bits I can repeat in a public environment anyway. Quote, hugely stressful. Sorry?
3 minutes. Could you wind up, please?
I thought members who contribute have 5 minutes to speak, Madam Mayor.
No, 3. I did say 3.
Are you sure it's 3 by the? Is it 3 by the Constitution?
Yeah. Well, no, it's not. I've got another 5 after you.
Right, so it's 5 minutes, and there's sorry, Madam Mayor, there's 20 seconds gone, so that's fine. Hugely stressful, quote, for those who are working is still just about paying monthly bills. Another quote, my council tax will be more than my mortgage soon. Another quote, pay more, get less, makes absolute sense. A mention of ivory towers, bonuses, you get the gist. And so while there is much talk around the budget setting process of needing to take people with us, have we? Indeed, the budget consultation results shared at Cabinet last week, it's a grim and worsening picture, a jump from 22 to almost 29% of respondents telling us that they believe we are not effective at all in meeting that aim, while only 8% think we're effective or very effective. So I'll pose the same question to the Cabinet member as last year. Do you consider that this authority has taken people with us in outlining the significant budget challenges and with it the express priorities of the Cabinet? Arguably, the most contentious issue in front of us today is the continued cut to delegated schools' budgets, adding what I believe to be undue pressure to a creaking system. The sense of irony isn't lost on me. Significant effort over the last 6 months has gone into insourcing aspects of service provision, waste and recycling, for example, the grass-cutting contract, both capital and revenue ongoing costs to this council, while in putting school delegated budget on the chopping block, we are outsourcing our budget responsibility. It doesn't sit comfortably with me that we push over £1 million worth of savings off the council's books and onto the books of head teachers, the majority of whom have already been setting deficit budgets for the last few years. We then ask them to develop deficit recovery plans, which is the stuff of Clyde Cuckoo land, as the budget situation is not improving, and therefore those plans are essentially not worth the paper they are written on. Very quickly, as I conclude, Madam Mayor, what is it that we can do to move away from the woe is us attitude and mentality, improve the outlook for local authorities? I believe there are 3 things that we could do either end of the M4. Really quickly, just run them off. Longer term budget settlements. This year-on-year drip down method is fraught with chaos and uncertainty. It makes planning for the future more crystal ball gazing than anything else. Secondly, a fundamental review of the Barnett formula in order that Wales can get its fair share of UK funding based on need. And lastly, Madam Mayor, there is no sound or logical reason for a population of 3.2 million people to have 22 local authorities, 1,200 councillors and a postcode lottery of service provision. It's high time that local government reform was on the agenda. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Amanda Williams, please.
Well said, young man. Well said.
Sorry, I didn't know if Ross wanted the leader to respond to him, because there was a question in there. I heard it.
No, I don't think so. I didn't take it as one.
There was a question posed to the Cabinet Member for Finance, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, trying to engage with the public is a challenge, and all we can be is open and honest with them, and hope that they will engage with us. I know that the County Borough is approaching a 30-year anniversary. I think the County Borough has got some very, very good a good track record in delivering some great projects, and I'm hoping that anniversary might highlight the opportunities then for public to be able to engage with us. It's all about trying to engage with the public. I do recognise that we've got quite an active citizens panel, and I am told, I've seen some evidence recently that our bulletin is very well received. This gets very, very high traction. But we've got to turn that into a two-way conversation, haven't we? So I'm sure there's some work to be done there. Regarding Councillor Ross Thomas's contribution regarding schools, I mean, I obviously didn't see what I had to say earlier, so he had a prepared statement, I had a prepared statement, and they kind of crossed over. I really do hope that the cross-party members will take this opportunity to scrutinise the school's funding formula. I'm not pretending that there's going to be an easy solution for this, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't get together and have a look at it, because the current system is clearly not working as well as it should do for schools, and we need to sit down together and come up with a better solution. So I'm hoping that that offer of a cross-party working group will be taken up, and I hope that we can get some proper solutions that can help fund our schools in a responsible manner. Thank you.
Food for thought. Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. Councillor Amanda Williams, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Can I just, before I ask my question, thank Councillor Howell Williams for that agreement, because that's something I've been asking for and pushing for in scrutiny education. So I would welcome looking at the current setup for schools. Thank you. Thank you. So my question is linked to the 24% cut in this budget to counselling services. And I mentioned it obviously because we raised it in our alternative, because it's something we wanted to save. I've had permission from a father who would like me to set something out rather quickly, that their child took an overdose of 30 tablets recently. They ended up in hospital. They were very lucky to pull through. They said, when asked, why did you do that? The answer was, I didn't want to wake up tomorrow. To me, that was shocking. They've tried to obtain counselling for a number of years, and they have been referred back and forth to CAMHS constantly. The day after this happened, CAMHS had written back and said they didn't meet criteria. Our counselling services are a breaking point for schools, and I've had a head teacher say to me, I've just come from a meeting where I've had 2 children and I've had to choose which one I send for counselling, because there is not enough counselling services out there for our children. We're due to look at this again in SOC 1, where we've got behaviour, well-being and attendance coming back to scrutiny for us to look at. So I would like to ask whoever in the Cabinet would like to answer this, what are we going to do if you're going to cut counselling services to protect these children and prevent any self-harm? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jane Kirby.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much, Councillor Williams, for your contribution. Firstly, thank you to the parent who's willing for you to share that information with us. I think it's really important. I think the one thing I would say is our counselling in school should not be dealing with those issues and concerns. It is a CAMHS issue, and that is mental health provision from the Health Board. It's not mental health provision from here as hearing council, whichever officer in social services or the education department you're talking about. While you were speaking, I was pulling up my regional partnership board framework for the NEST. That's a regional priority. Children and young people are a priority. There is a piece of work undergoing at the minute, and it involves all stakeholders in that piece of work, because we do want our young children and young people to have appropriate access to the appropriate services. I do not think that would be in school. For someone who is so significantly complex and is in crisis like that, they should not be being seen by a school counsellor. That's the first thing I'm going to say. They wouldn't have the skills or the qualifications to be able to refer and deal onwards with them. That's why we're doing a NEST framework. There is no wrong front door. That is Welsh Government's provision. They have instructed all regional partnership boards to undertake this work, and the strategy is there on the regional partnership website. So I am happy to send you the link so that you can have a look yourself, but it shouldn't be as hearing council. In relation to our children and young people, so when we made that decision around the counselling service as a cabinet, one of the things that I asked Lindsay was, is that going to impact on service delivery to our young people? His answer was very clearly no, and they would manage, there would be no detriment to the services provided to our young people in schools. So I hope that helps and assists you.
Thank you, Councillor Gerbie. Councillor Ian Spiller, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's very, very welcome to me that the Bridgend Music Service threat was removed from the draft budget and obviously didn't form part of the final budget proposals. However, I do have some concerns. As an opposition member, we're often told about a one council approach where we should feed in to budget setting. And it's very, very difficult to do that when 0.726 million suddenly appears from nowhere from a draft budget into a final budget. So my question is for the leader, really. Can he point me to the page, to the paragraph in the draft budget where 0.726 million exists for us to be able to save some essential service? And I'm very, very grateful that that service was retained. But for the purposes of transparency, I've gone through that draft budget line by line, as you would expect, when we were trying to put in an amendment. And it's very, very disappointing to me that I can't find that amount of money that we could have used to prevent that cut. Because when we looked at it, we were having to find that in full. So could the leader please advise me the page and the paragraph where that 0.726 million exists, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spiller. Councillor Spanswick, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Spiller. Except we say that paragraph may not exist within the papers, but what we are talking about here is the difference between the very early draft budget being put together before we knew the final settlement from Welsh Government. And as that final settlement came along and was better than expected, then there was some room to manoeuvre and removing some of the proposed cuts. So I can't point you to a paragraph, and there might not be there, and perhaps Carys can. I'm not. But the difference is between the early stage draft budget and then knowing the actual the settlement, which was better than expected and better than the estimates that we'd based on, like a 1% medium or 2%. We ended up with the 3.9. So that then gave us the extra headroom to make decisions about what we could remove from the proposed cuts.
I'll fetch in Clarice now for some clarification, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's actually paragraph 3.6.3 in the draft budget report, where it says that there is some unallocated funding in the budget. And we were prudently keeping that behind to see whether or not any other information with regards to grants or anything like that came forward before we finalised the budget. So if you look, Councillor Spiller, in the January report at paragraph 3.6.3, it says that.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, may I just seek a point of clarification from Carys, please? Could she just confirm that the amount of 0.726 million exists in that paragraph and it wasn't just said some overleft money unallocated, please?
Thank you for that, Councillor Spiller. There is no figure in that paragraph, but equally it was a paragraph that members could have asked about when it went through the scrutiny committee, but nobody asked for that detail.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Griffiths, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to sit back a little bit and think about the process that we've just gone through. There's been a lot of comment about the process. I've sat on BREP right the way through that, and I think this has been one of the hardest years that I've had, although my tenure as a councillor has been quite short. But we have had to find savings this year, which I think are the largest set of savings, despite the extra money from the Labour government, since pre-2010. It's the largest single chunk we've had to find. And unfortunately, we have to find that amount in subsequent years as well. This will be a great challenge for us in the future years. I think the process we've gone through has been an effective process. I think we have had significant changes. For example, the school music service, which I think all of us as councillors have probably seen the biggest mailbox for any single issue. And we have, as a council, responded to that and made some changes to that. So I do want to congratulate the officers on achieving what was a phenomenal task around finding those savings for this year and actually planning for those savings for the following years. And that will be an ongoing challenge for us in the future. I do have one question, which is actually around the music service, which many of you will know is a subject close to my heart. And I understand that we want to look for future efficiencies in that. So if I could ask the Cabinet member to just give us a little bit more detail about the process we'll go through to identify what that service might look like in the future.
Thank you. Martin, would you like to comment?
Yeah, can I thank Councillor Simon Griffiths for his question? Just to put some context on this, when obviously informal budget discussions are ongoing between Cabinet members and directors, and going back to the summertime, I sat down with our Director, Lindsay Harvey, and we discussed basically our budget and the budget pressures that we were confronted with. And I asked a simple question: what is the statutory and what are non-statutory services that we provided? And the director quite rightly outlined the fact that music services was a non-statutory provision, so we decided to put that out for consultation. And it's for all to see that the consultation that we received was very positive. And perhaps I can take this opportunity to thank all those who responded. And if anything, what we've achieved there is to raise the profile of how important that music services are across the county borough. And if you could recall, members, in 2 scrutiny meetings, I specifically said that we are a listening cabinet. We are a listening administration. We will listen to what people tell us. And that's what we did. We made a cabinet decision and a group decision not to cut that particular service, even though it's a non-statutory obligation on us to do so. Now, of course, the challenge will be, how can we ensure the long-term longevity and sustainability of this service? And the commitment I'm going to give is this. With the director, we will meet the head of music, Simon Gray, and we will go through what is available to us to ensure that the music service remains across the county borough. And finally, what I would like to say as well is we have taken the step to write to every person who was part of the consultation process and approached us with their representations for the music service. I would hazard a guess that perhaps we will miss 1 or 2, but I can confirm that the leader has personally written to the children, the young people and the adults who took the time to make those representations. So very briefly then, Councillor Griffiths, the commitment I will give you is there will be this meeting with the head of music and we will look for a long-term plan to maintain the service.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Gebby, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I just thought it would be appropriate for me to make some comments in relation to my social services brief and the budget. I made comments at Cabinet about supporting our MTFS proposal for consideration before members this afternoon, and my position has not changed since then. I think we have listened to scrutiny. Scrutiny recommended that we undertake some zero-based budgeting, which we have done in Social Services and Wellbeing Directorate due to the inability of ours to remain within our proposed budgets. And we do appreciate that that was ever-increasing demand and complexity of our residents, but these are recurrent budget pressures and they are being addressed within this budget, all of which acknowledge our resident survey indicators to protect and safeguard our residents in the community, without the over-reliance on grant funding that historically social services provision has relied upon. I am confident that this proposed budget is balanced and achievable and continues the positive work our council undertakes in being a leader in the social services world now for how we conduct our business of safeguarding when we consider the most significant pressures facing this authority are the costs of supporting and protecting our most vulnerable residents, particularly our children. I also believe that we need to acknowledge the support of our partnerships, particularly Arwin, Halo and Barvo, who are achieving considerable social value for our communities, providing increased offers of a highly preventative nature and continuing to provide best value. We've listened and we're delivering, so I would ask all members of the Chambers to vote for this Labour administration's medium-term financial strategy. Thanks very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gebby. Councillor Martin Williams and then Councillor Martin Jones, and then I intend to take a short break afterwards. Councillor Martin Williams, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Back in the autumn, the Cabinet talk about listening and listening to scrutiny. Back in the autumn, Scrutiny 3 recommended when we discussed the future domestic waste collection service, recommended that we should defer any decision while and unanimously recommended that we should defer any decision on the future waste service.
Councillor Williams, can I interrupt you there? That is not on the budget.
I'm sorry, so it's not in the MTFS?
The decision
is there no provision for the future waste service in the MTFS? Because the papers I've read does have a provision in there. Could I continue, please, madam?
I've been told to forward it to scrutiny. Sorry. It's been through scrutiny. Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Excuse me, this is the prelude to my question. I'll just get to my question.
I think
within this MTFS, there are future budget pressures from 2027 onwards of £1.2 million a year as a result of bringing the future waste contract or replacing the future waste contract with an in-house provision. So that's £1.2 million a year budget pressure simply to bring the waste collection in-house, where there was a provision within the existing contract to extend for 2 years at the current rates. So that's 2.4 million that has been brought forward when it could have been deferred, and that's 2.4 million that could have been spent on schools or other projects. Does the leader regret rushing into this? And would he now, on reflection, revisit this decision and seek to reallocate that 2.4 million to our schools where it is badly, desperately needed? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Leader, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. First off, I'm not sure it's 1.24 million in 26-27 budget, not for the 2.4 million. I'm not sure where that figure is in today's papers in one line, but it's there as 1.24 million. It's been through scrutiny as part of this budget, and Cabinet have provided response. But also, I want to make it clear, the cost to bring it out is not 1.24 million. That is the cost that's in there, yes. But even if it went back out the contract, the tender, the very likely it did, and it was within the scrutiny reports, it was in the consultants' reports, the additional cost back of the tender could well be 900,000 to £1 million. So the additional cost, which has been all along, is the difference between paying the staff who provide that service to every house in the county borough, the pension scheme. That's the difference, not 1.24 million. Because if we went back out the tender tomorrow, the chances are it could cost £1 million more anyway. So let's be clear with that figure. It doesn't explain it, perhaps the narrative that well, but that's the reality. The extra cost is basically a choice between paying a private contractor the profits or paying staff here a pension, and the staff that provide service to every single person in this county borough. I'm quite happy to support paying the staff a decent wage, decent pension, because they provide that service to every county borough and not the profit of private companies. And I'm happy to stand by that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Leader. I'll now go on to Councillor Martin Jones,
please, Madam Mayor. I was not on about...
Sorry, you've had an answer. I'm moving on.
It was an incomplete
Councillor
answer.
Martin Jones, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't want to labour the point about the counselling services, because I think the Deputy Leader has provided a very detailed response, far better than what I could have done. But can I thank Amanda Williams for putting in the personal touch? I'm not cited on that particular example that you presented, but what I would say to you, if you would reach out for the family, and I'm more than happy to take the lead in reviewing the support to that family, because I think it's important that that family feels reassured that we are genuinely concerned and we genuinely have a desire to support the family. So can I make that point publicly and make that point to yourself as well? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. We'll now vote on it, please. Is it a yay or a nay?
No.
No.
The yeas have it, yes. Thank you very much. We'll now have a 10-minute...
Sorry, can we have a vote?
Recorded votes, please.
Can we have a vote, please?
Yes, did have it.
Yes, I've got it.
Okay, members, so it's yes to accept the budget or no if you're not in favour of the budget. Thank you.
32 to...
Thank you. Again, alphabetically, I will go through the names. Thank you. Councillor Anthony Barrow.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor John Paul Blundell.
Yes.
Councillor Eugene Caparros.
Yes, please.
Councillor Nora Clark.
Sorry, can I just confirm how we're voting? Is it no if you're against? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, it's yes for the budget, no against or abstain.
No then, thank you, Rachel.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Collins.
Yes.
Councillor Hugh David.
Yes.
Councillor Chris Davis.
No.
Councillor Colin Davis.
Yes.
Councillor Paul Davis.
Yes.
Councillor Stephen Easterbrook.
No.
Councillor Melanie Evans.
Yes.
Councillor Neil O'Farr.
Yes.
Councillor Paula Ford.
Yes.
Councillor Jane Gebby.
Yes.
Councillor Rhys Good.
Yes.
Councillor Richard Granville.
Yes.
Councillor Heather Griffiths.
Yes.
Councillor Simon Griffiths.
Yes.
Councillor Gary Haynes.
Yes.
Councillor David Harrison.
No.
Councillor Della Hughes.
No.
Councillor Martin Hughes.
Yes.
Councillor Malcolm James.
Yes, with reservations.
Thank you. Councillor Phil Jenkins.
No.
Councillor Mark John.
No.
Councillor Martin Jones.
Yes.
Councillor William Kendall.
Yes.
Councillor Maxine Lewis.
Yes.
Councillor Joanna Llewellyn Hopkins.
Yes.
Councillor Jonathan Pratt.
Against.
Councillor John Spanswick.
Yes.
Councillor Ian Spiller.
No.
Councillor Ross Thomas.
No.
Councillor Tim Thomas.
No.
Councillor Graham Walter.
Yes.
Councillor Alan Wathen.
No.
Councillor Amanda Williams.
No.
Councillor Ian Williams.
No.
Councillor Martin Williams.
No.
Councillor Howell Williams.
Yes.
Councillor Richard Williams.
Yes.
Sorry, 1 second. Thank you. Councillor Elaine Winstanley.
Yes.
And Councillor Tim Wood.
No.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, the vote is carried for the recommendation 27 to 16. Thank you.
I can't even say it now. Substantive budget is therefore carried. Thank you. We now have a 10-minute break, please. Back at 6. Please, Council Tax 2526, please.
That's me, Madam Mayor.
I will now ask the Chief Officer, Finance, Housing and Change to present this report, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So, the purpose of this report is to provide Council with details of the council tax requirement for the County Borough Council, together with the requirements of the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales and the town and community councils within this area, and to ask Council to note the aggregate charge for each community council area for each council tax band for the coming financial year. So, in accordance with the Local Government Finance Act 1992, the Council has to calculate its budget requirement and formally approve the council tax for the coming year. In addition, as a billing authority, Bridgend County Borough Council is also required to calculate the basic amount for council tax for dwellings within the area which relate to one or more special items. This council collects council tax on behalf of town and community councils and the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales. So the money is collected on behalf of these organisations and is then paid over to them in line with the amount they have included in their budget to be charged to households in the County Borough of Bridgend. Council has just agreed a net budget requirement for this council for the coming financial year of £383.3 million. The amount to be funded by the council tax is £106,698,377. This equates to a council tax of £1,916.96 on a Band D property. This is a 4.5% increase for the coming year. The Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales has notified the Council that their precept for the coming financial year was agreed by the South Wales Police and Crime Panel on the 4th of February this year. As a result, their precept on a Band D property will increase to £378.67, and this is a 7.37% increase. The impact of this increase by council tax banding is shown in Table 3 of today's report. The Council has also been informed of the budget requirements by town and community councils, and this is an average 7.88% increase for the coming financial year. So Table 5 within your report details for you the total average Band D council tax requirement for the coming year for all areas of Bridgend. A further breakdown of the council tax for each area, detailing the amount payable to this council, the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales and the relevant community council is shown in Table 6. In the last report that you agreed, the previous report, agenda item, Band D council tax for this council of £1,916.96 for the coming year has now been agreed. I would therefore, Madam Mayor, take members to the recommendations at section 9 in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Caris. Can I have a move and a seconder, please?
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have Councillor Howell-Williams, please.
Just very briefly, Madam Mayor, I think it might be worth noting at this moment that the council tax also covers a number of levies, and I've kindly been presented with a note which, with your permission, I'll inform the members of the Chamber and of the wider public. The South Wales Central Coroner Service is included as a levy. We paid them £455,000, so that's included in your council tax charge. The Glamorgan Archives levy, £126,000. Margam Crematorium, £447,000. Swansea Bay Port Health Authority, £14,276. And of course the South Wales Fire and Rescue Authority, and they get a nice around £9.5 million from that. So I just thought the members of the public and possibly members of the Chamber would be interested to hear that.
Thank you very much.
The report.
Thank you. Can I take the members to the report's recommendation and ask, are you all in favour, please?
Aye.
Thank you very much. We'll go on to 5, Capital Strategy 2526. I will now ask the Chief Officer, Finance, Housing and Change to present this report, please. Caris.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to present to Council the capital strategy for the periods 2025-26 through to 2034-35, which includes the prudential indicators against which the Council measures itself during the financial year, and also the annual minimum revenue provision statement for 25-26. Local authorities are required to determine a capital strategy, which demonstrates that the authority takes capital expenditure and investment decisions in line with service objectives and properly takes account of stewardship, value for money, prudence, sustainability and affordability when making these decisions. This strategy must be approved by full council. Local authorities should have in place a capital strategy that sets out the long-term context in which capital expenditure and investment decisions are made and gives due consideration to both risk and reward and impact on the achievement of priority outcomes. The strategy should set out the principles to be used to guide the allocation of capital investment across all the council services and informs decisions on capital spending priorities. It also reports on the delivery, affordability and the risks associated with the strategy. The proposed capital strategy for the periods 2025-26 through to 2034-35 is attached to Appendix A of this report. The strategy sets out the Council's plan for capital expenditure and how the programme is to be funded over the coming 10 years. In developing long-term investment decisions, it's crucial that decisions are based on clear information, including a long-term plan of service priorities and management plans. Where capital investment is needed to deliver the Council's priorities, this strategy is the framework that the Council can rely on to develop a clear, consistent and informed process in undertaking capital investment decisions. This document is presented as an integral part of the Council's budget and policy framework. It links with the corporate plan, the Treasury management strategy, the medium-term financial strategy and the Council's asset management plan. There are 13 principles which drive the budget and spending decisions of this Council. 3 of these refer specifically to the capital programme. These are that capital investment decisions are in alignment with the Council's capital strategy and mitigate any statutory risks, taking account of them on investment and sound options appraisals. That prudential borrowing is only used to support the capital programme where it is affordable and sustainable within the Council's overall borrowing limits and the revenue budget over the longer period. And that decisions on the treatment of surplus assets are based on an assessment of the potential contribution to the revenue budget and the capital programme. To reflect this, the capital strategy is based on the following guiding principles. We focus capital investment on the delivery of the Council's wellbeing objectives and priorities. We ensure strong governance over decision making. Ensure that capital plans are affordable, sustainable and prudent. And we maximise and promote the best use of our available funds. The plan details how any proposed investments in land and buildings will require the completion of a full feasibility study to evaluate the practicality of the capital project and to assess its deliverability before the Council invests time and money into that project. The strategy notes that there are a number of significant areas that will need financing going forward, including economic recovery, decarbonisation, homelessness and digitisation. As reported to Council throughout this year, there are other financial pressures arising in existing schemes within the programme, and it is anticipated that this will continue for some time going forward. These pressures include the increased prices of materials as a result of inflation, supply chain difficulties, and also issues around being able to resource projects appropriately, both by us and by our partners. So this strategy also refers to the changes with regards to the ability to borrow from the Public Works Loan Board to invest primarily for financial return. When seeking to borrow from the Public Works Loan Board, authorities will be asked to confirm that there is no intention to buy investment assets primarily for yield in the current or the next 2 financial years. Whilst this does not preclude the Council from investing in commercial activities, investing in assets solely for yield would prevent the Council from accessing the Public Works Loan Board borrowing facility. As the Council will need to borrow to support our capital programme going forward, it would prevent the council investing in land or property purely to achieve a financial return, as we would be dependent on the PWLB for our borrowing. Also, a new international financial reporting standard is now in place, which requires the council to recognise assets and liabilities for all leases over 12 months. This is a new element, and it's included in your papers today at pages 194 and 195. Major capital projects require careful management to mitigate the potential risks which can arise. So the effective monitoring, management and mitigation of these risks is a key part of managing the capital strategy. In section 3 of the strategy, details are contained which outline the robust process in place to approve, manage and monitor capital projects. As members are aware, quarterly capital monitoring reports are prepared for Cabinet and Council, which include details of any variances between projects, as well as projections of likely year-end spend. In 2025-2026, the Council is planning capital expenditure of over £120 million, and this is summarised for you at Table 2 within the strategy document. The main capital projects to be undertaken in that period include work on a number of our schools under the Sustainable Communities for Learning programme, disabled facilities grants, highway refurbishment, Fourth Core Ground Pavilion, and also the playground refurbishments. The Council has several funding streams available to support capital investment, and these are detailed for you in Appendix 1 of the strategy. We do receive support from Welsh Government towards the cost of capital, and this funding is prioritised towards investment that's required to meet health and safety requirements. There are currently no nationally imposed restrictions to the level of borrowing that the Council can incur to pay for capital investment, but the Council must be able to repay any debt that it has, and this is a key element of any decision to borrow funds. The Council approves its own affordable borrowing limit. There are two main types of borrowing to pay for capital investment, and these are supported borrowing, where the costs of servicing the debt are included within the annual revenue support grant that we receive from Welsh Government, and unsupported borrowing, and the cost of this must be met from the Council's revenue budget. Finally, each year the Council must set aside a provision for repaying external debt, and this is known as the minimum revenue provision. And this needs to be approved by Council before the start of each financial year. And the policy statement with regards to that can be seen in section 7 of today's report. When agreeing the Council's capital programme, members must be aware of the revenue budget impact of capital schemes, and that could include the cost of operating or maintaining a new asset, the capital financing costs of servicing any borrowing required to pay for that investment, and also the revenue costs of preparing and delivering projects. The percentage of the Council's revenue budget that is committed to capital financing costs is increasing in the long term. Given the pressure on revenue budgets, this limits the affordability of other priorities in future years and should be a factor considered by members when determining the capital programme. So if I may, Madam Mayor, could I now take you to the recommendations at section 9 of this report? Thank you.
Thank you, Caris. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Thank you. Councillor Simon Griffiths, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. It's really a question on that 120 million overspend in the year 25 and 26, which is a huge amount of money to be spending in that year. I wonder whether either the Education Cabinet Member or the Education Director could give us a little bit of an outline, more of the details about where that...
He's next in line to you.
...is 82 million is actually going, please.
Okay. Howell or Martin, which one? Lindsay, yeah.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Griffiths. Principally is to furnish the new bills with regard to the Welsh Government Sustainable Community Learning Programme in Band B. So obviously a very exciting development with Heronsbridge School, building on the excellent practice that's currently in that school and providing them with a state-of-the-art new special school. A new Mynydd Cymfig school, obviously desperately needed with regard to the failure of the infant building some time ago, and to build on our very ambitious Welsh Education Strategic Programme, replacing the current Brogo with a larger, newer school in the Brackler area, and also a vertical scale in Cornelly. In addition to that, then looking at building a new building for Cornelly and Avonavellin primary schools. So a very ambitious programme, and will be of great benefit, no doubt, to the staff and learners of these schools.
Thank you, Lindsay. Councillor Howell-Williams, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank Carys for presenting the report. I think it's a key element of what we do as an authority. Our capital strategy is a 10-year development programme. As Carys said, it invests over 10 years, 109 million in education establishments. It addresses some issues that we've got in social care and culture. That there's £100 million investment in communities over a 10-year period, and £27 million for housing and homeless. So all in all, it's quite an exciting programme, and obviously it's based on, I think the point I'm going to come to, it's based on best available information we have at the time. And that is the purpose of the quarterly monitoring of and the quarterly updates of the capital programme. As information becomes more apparent, then the programme is updated in line with relevant information. So I just wanted to make that point, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Thank you.
Councillor John Paul Blundell, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just really to ask to also thank Carys for the work she does on this, but also it's good to see the extra money for Disabled Facilities Grant. I know in scrutiny we've raised a number of concerns regarding this in Cosgree and others, where the backlog is still there from the pandemic. So although I assume the answer will be it won't cover all the backlog, but will this go some way to start clearing that backlog of work for in DFGs, and that when eventually DFGs come to scrutiny, we'll be able to start seeing a movement on that target. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Amanda Williams, please.
Sorry, did you want an answer first?
I was going to say, yeah. I'd like one, but I'd like it before the next scrutiny meeting, but we'll never know. If you don't mind, Madam Mayor, could I? From Carys, preferably. You're looking at me as if I've got two heads, Madam Mayor.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Blundell. This will go some way to helping us clear the backlog. It won't clear it all in 1 year, but we have increased the base budget ongoing now in relation to disabled facilities grants. We now have all the processes in place to be able to process these grants more effectively. So I would hope that next time we bring some information through to you in Scrutiny Committee, you should see an improvement in the time that people have had to wait for their adaptations and the number that we're doing.
Thank you, Carys. Councillor Jane Kirby, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. As Lindsay referenced, Mynydd Cymvig Primary School, I better register personal interest, please, as Chair of Governors, LEA appointed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Williams, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a clarification, really, from Carys. You referenced the Public Works Loan Board and the rules restricting what activities can be funded through loans. You detailed the restrictions on borrowing for commercial activity. Presumably that wouldn't preclude any spend to save schemes or solar energy or that sort of thing, which would cut our cost as opposed to external revenue generation.
No, I think we would have flexibility on that as long as we weren't seeking to make financial gain from it. So if it's to support us in services that we would ordinarily provide, and it can help improve either the financial viability of the council and a valuable service, then we can borrow for that. What it wouldn't allow us to do is just to go and buy speculative buildings or, like some authorities have been doing in England. We wouldn't be able to do that.
Thank you, Carys. Councillor Elaine Winstanley, please.
I'd just like to register a personal declaration of interest as I'm a Vice Chair of Avonavellin Governor, and I'm also a Governor of Ysgol Ferchysger, and we welcome the new builds.
Duly noted. Councillor Amanda Williams, please.
Thank you. I'll get there in the end, asking my question. In November, we had a paper to council with regards to the increased budget for Herons Bridge. Then in January, this was discussed, and also Harwood House, the scheme to move Harwood House. But those two increases are not shown in this capital programme. Given that it's now for the new financial year, I just wondered why these aren't shown anywhere, because we do know that they are going to be additional costs and that the bills will come in at more than is it detailed in this report. Thank you.
Caris or Lindsay? Caris? Yes.
Want me to take this? Feel free to add anything, Lindsay, when I finished. For the recording, Deborah Exton, Deputy Head of Finance. So the Herons Bridge School Scheme, additional funding was approved, as you said, Councillor Williams, back in November, and that is included in the budget for Herons Bridge. What is not included at the moment is the funding, the match funding from Welsh Government, because they only approved that at final business case stage. So there is no expectation that that won't be approved, but obviously we've got to go through the formal business case process first. Harwood House, whilst there's a tender going out, I think that's an option within the tender to get the cost back, but there's no funding been approved for that, and the service are actively seeking the funding for that. So that will come back and come into the capital programme if and when that's approved. It could be grant funding. I think Councillor Gebby wants to add to that.
Councillor Gebby, do you want to come in?
I do indeed, yes, thank you. So Harwood House is on the Regional Partnership Capital Programme. It's not actually money that comes into the council, it's distributed above regional. I'd sent you a link earlier around the NEST framework and the priorities for young people and children. That is actually referenced as part of the reports in there if you want to have a look. So the funding we're seeking comes from the Housing with Care Fund, and that isn't owned. We don't own that in the council. We can't schedule that sort of spend of money. That would go through the regional partnership because it has to do all of CTM as a strategy rather than just here in Bridgend. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gebby. Can I take the members for the report's recommendation and ask, are you all in favour, please? Aye. Thank you very much. We've gone to number 6, Treasury Management Strategy 25-26. I will now ask the Chief Officer of Finance, Housing and Change to present the report, please, Caris.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to present to Council the Treasury Management Strategy for 2025-26. And this includes the borrowing strategy for next year, the Treasury Investment Strategy for next year, and also the Treasury Management Indicators. The Treasury Management functions of the Council are regulated by the Local Government Act 2003. This provides authorities with powers to borrow and invest, as well as providing controls and limits on that activity. In accordance with the Chartered Institute of Public Finance's Prudential Code for Capital Finance, the Council must approve a Treasury Management Strategy before the start of each financial year, which sets out the Council's and the Chief Financial Officer's responsibilities, delegations and reporting arrangements. So Treasury management activities are defined as the management of the organisation's borrowing, investments and cash flows, including its banking, money market and capital market transactions, the effective control of the risks associated with those activities, and the pursuit of optimum performance consistent with those risks. The proposed strategy for the coming financial year is attached to Appendix A. The Council undertakes its Treasury management activities in accordance with the Chartered Institute of Public Finance's Prudential Code, which has been updated to reflect changes in an increasingly complex environment and to complement the changes to regulations. The Code requires that formal and comprehensive objectives, policies and practices, strategies and reporting arrangements are in place for the effective management and control of Treasury management activities, and that the effective management and control of risk are the prime objectives of these activities. The Council has an integrated Treasury management strategy where borrowing and investments are managed in accordance with best professional practice. The Council will look to borrow money if needed to either meet short-term cash flow needs or to fund capital schemes approved within the capital programme. It is important to note that any actual loans that are taken out are not generally associated with particular items of expenditure or assets. The Council is exposed to financial risks, including the potential loss of invested funds and the revenue effect of changing interest rates. The successful identification, monitoring and control of risk are therefore central to this Treasury management strategy. Should anything change significantly, then a revised strategy will be presented to Council for approval. The ongoing impact on the UK of the war in Ukraine, together with inflation, changing interest rates, changing government policy and a deteriorating economic outlook will be major influences on our Treasury management strategy for next year. As at the end of March 2024, the Council held £99.38 million of long-term borrowing and had made £42.9 million of investments. It should be noted that the level of investments that the Council has is reducing. The external debt and investment position is shown for you at Table 1. The Treasury Management Strategy highlights that it's anticipated that the Council may need to borrow during the next 3 years. However, this position can change should capital schemes not progress as anticipated, or conversely, further schemes are added to the programme that are not fully funded by grant or revenue contributions, or new schemes added which will require additional debt financing. The requirement to borrow will need to be monitored on an ongoing basis, and any new borrowing will be considered alongside any changes in the capital programme that may affect the level of borrowing required. When borrowing money, the Council's primary objective is to strike an appropriate low-risk balance between securing low interest costs and achieving certainty of those costs over the period for which the funds are required. The strategy outlines that the major objectives for the Council with regards to borrowing in 2025-26 will include minimising the revenue costs of our debt, managing our debt maturity profile, rescheduling debt if that's appropriate, and also to optimise the use of all capital resources, including borrowing, usable capital receipts, revenue contributions to capital, and also grants and other contributions. In November 2020, the Treasury issued revised lending terms for Public Works Loan Board borrowing by local authorities. And members will be aware that Public Works Loan Board is a major source of any borrowing for the Council. And under these requirements, as the Section 151 officer, I would be required to confirm that the capital expenditure plans do not include an intention by the authority to borrow to invest primarily for financial return, and I can confirm that the Council does not intend to invest in that way. As outlined earlier, at the end of December 2024, the Council had £42.9 million of investments. And as I've already said, the level of those investments is reducing as our reserves are falling. The Council's main objective when investing money is to strike an appropriate balance between risk and return, to minimise the risk of incurring losses from defaults and the risk of receiving unsuitably low investment income. The Council may invest its surplus funds with approved counterparties, and these are detailed for you at Table 7 of the strategy. The table also details the time limits and upper financial limits that will apply to each of those counterparties. These investments do earn income for the Council, and during 2023-2024, that income received was £3.9 million. This year to date, interest of £1.8 million has been earned. However, it is anticipated that this will reduce as the level of our reserves reduces and therefore the investments that we can place falls. During 25-26, the Council will receive reports as required in line with the requirements of the Code of Practice. This will include an annual Treasury Management Strategy, which you have today, but also a mid-year monitoring report and an annual Treasury Outturn report. So if I may, Madam Mayor, could I refer members to the recommendations at Section 9 of this report? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caris, for humongous effort that's gone into this. Can I have a mover and seconder, please?
I'll move.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Griffiths, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and at the risk of upsetting all my colleagues, who I'm sure want to get home for their evening
Not
meal.
like you, Simon, at all.
It's really something that we've already reviewed this in scrutiny, but I think it's worthwhile mentioning that on page 242, we have the list of approved sources, which include local authorities. And we're all aware, obviously, in the news every day around, especially the English local authorities, many of which are either going under or in severe financial constraints. I wonder if Carys could outline for us the additional safeguards we have in place to make sure that if we were to decide to have any financial dealings with any of those English local authorities, that we are certain that we can either get our money back or that it's appropriately invested, please.
Thank you for that question, Councillor Griffiths, and it is so important when we've got this amount of money invested elsewhere that we're careful where we place it. And the authority does have a very good track record actually with regards to managing the risk of our investments. But there are a number of ways that we do that. You'll see in the report that we have a list of counterparties who we've agreed that we will place with, and we don't go outside of that list. If it needs to be updated, then we would update it and bring it back to you for approval. That limits who we can place with, but it will also include two other limits, which is the amount that we can place with any one organisation, and that's capped, and also the length of time that we can place it. So because the longer our money is out, the more risk we're taking, really. So we manage it by the organisation, by the amount that we can place with them, and also with the value that we can place with them. We also take advice from our Treasury Management advisors, and they provide us with regular information with regards to the counterparties that we have and any movements in the financial market which may cause us to take some of those off the list or to be wary of. And it's a very sad point as well that we're also keep a very close eye on those local authorities that are reporting that they're in financial difficulty. So they've got to the stage where they are issuing Section 114 notices, and we don't place money with those organisations either. So we do have a lot of checks and balances in the system to make sure that when we put our money out, it's safe and we minimise the risk as much as we possibly can.
Thank you, Carys. Councillor Martin Williams, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Probably a question for Carys, given the complexity of it and the depth of knowledge required. You alluded to the fact that we are entering a phase now where we've got diminishing capital reserves, and we will enter a world of borrowing, increasingly so. You'll know my views on the capital programme generally. Would you like to reinforce to all members the importance, therefore, of accurate and timely forecasting of capital schemes, so that borrowing is kept to a minimum, and we're not borrowing money which we're then sitting on because of slippage and so on and so forth? So essentially, would you reinforce to the Chamber the importance of forecasting, particularly as we enter this new world of borrowing? Thanks.
Carys, please.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Williams, for that question. You're absolutely right. It is essential that we do a lot of monitoring, but that actually starts before a scheme gets into the programme as well, about making sure that we know before we actually agree any projects exactly how they're going to be funded and whether or not any borrowing is required in the first instance. And then, before we agree to borrow, we have to make sure that we have the revenue capacity to actually repay that money. So there's a lot of work that goes on before those schemes get into the programme, as you know. And then you're absolutely right, we need to profile that spend over years, and we do try and update that because we come to you quarterly with the capital programme, and we will look at that profiling on a very regular basis so that we're not in a position where we wouldn't borrow ahead of need anyway, and we don't do that, but that we're only borrowing at the point at which we actually need that money, and we only borrow as little as we need to, really, because obviously there's a revenue consequence to us if we borrow money that we don't actually require. So we do monitor that very closely.
Thank you, Carys. Can I take the members to the report's recommendations and ask, are you all in favour, please? Thank you. Carried. You'll be pleased to know, item 7, I have no urgent items. I will therefore close the meeting.
Thank you. Good night, all. Good night.